All prominent Christian sects today claim that Jesus is God. Part of being God is possessing all knowledge. So when Christians come across the verse where Jesus explicitly says he doesn't know something, they understandably find it puzzling. Jesus says, "But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Reconciling a being that is both all-knowing and yet says he doesn't know something creates a natural tension. The common explanation Christians offer for this passage is that Jesus did not know the hour in his human nature, but in his divine nature he did know. However, both Catholics and Eastern Orthodox Christians view this position as problematic because it implies that Jesus has two different quote-unquote sets of knowledge simultaneously. This could suggest that Jesus is two distinct persons, one with divine knowledge and another with human knowledge. This line of reasoning closely resembles Nestorianism, an early Christian heresy that argued that Christ was two separate persons, one human and one divine, rather than a single unified person with two natures. Since most Christians would want to avoid falling into any position that could imply Nestorianism, let's examine other ways this passage has been explained. Another approach taken by some traditional Christians is to claim that Jesus did actually know the hour. While this might seem odd given that Jesus plainly says that he doesn't know, it's nonetheless a common approach. To reconcile this, proponents of this argue that the Greek term for know could mean to declare. So Jesus might have been saying that he could not declare the hour rather than saying he didn't know the hour in terms of knowledge. An example often cited to prove this is when Paul says that he knows nothing but Christ. Though obviously Paul knew other things besides Christ. They interpret Paul as meaning here that he was made to declare nothing but Christ. However, we should distinguish between a possible interpretation and a probable one. Just because it's possible that the Greek word could mean to declare in particular contexts, that doesn't mean it's the most apparent meaning. To determine what the author likely intended, we should examine the immediate context of the text and the historical interpretations closest to the time who spoke the original language. To justify interpreting know as declare, the burden is on the interpreter to show that this understanding is more likely than the straightforward reading of know as actual knowledge. Historical and textual contexts help us see what the original audience and the gospel authors most likely understood the passage to mean. Let's start with the textual context. This statement about Jesus not knowing the hour appears in both Mark and in Matthew. In Mark's account, Jesus goes on to say, after saying he doesn't know the hour, that be on guard and alert, because you do not know when that time will come. Here, it's evident from the context that know is used in the sense of possessing knowledge. Otherwise, how would it make any sense to be cautious because we don't declare the hour? Jesus then gives an example of a master leaving his servants, and his servants do not know when he'll return. Here again, the focus is on a lack of knowledge. In Matthew, the context is expanded upon. Jesus first mentions the people of Noah's day who didn't have the knowledge that the flood was coming. Then he talks about a homeowner who, had he known that a thief would have come, would have kept watch initially. Finally, Jesus uses the example of servants who don't know when their master will return and should remain vigilant to avoid being caught off guard. Across all of these examples, the theme is consistent. Know is clearly used in the sense of knowledge. This is further reinforced by historical interpretations of the passage. The earliest interpretations of Jesus not knowing the hour take this statement as a literal lack of knowledge. Early church fathers like Irenaeus and Athanasius understood the passage in this very way. Irenaeus, writing in the 2nd century, states that just as Jesus wasn't ashamed to admit that he didn't have knowledge of the hour, we also shouldn't be ashamed to admit our own limitations in knowledge. Athanasius, a respected 4th century theologian, explicitly states that according to the flesh, Jesus did not know the hour, but according to his divinity, he did. Athanasius's words highlight the early view that while Jesus was divine, he genuinely experienced human limitations in knowledge. These early and respected figures, close to the time of Jesus, that knew the language and context and went ahead to read the passage as indicating that Jesus literally did not possess knowledge of the hour. Only later, as Christian doctrine evolved, did theologians feel the need to interpret the passage differently to fit new theological frameworks. Some, like St. Jerome and St. Ambrose, even suggested that the phrase "nor the Son" might be an addition to the text, reflecting the struggle to actually reconcile this passage with emerging doctrines on Christ's nature. But this sort of reconciliation has no backing. There are variants in the Matthew version, but in the Mark version, it would be rare for you to find any sort of variation in the manuscript tradition. This also begs the question on why is there variation in Matthew, with Jesus not being mentioned as not knowing the hour. A probable case could be made that scribes found it theologically problematic and decided to not include it. So bringing together all these points, the textual context, the earliest historical understandings, and the struggles of later theologians to actually reconcile this passage existing with developed doctrines, ends up pointing towards a consistent conclusion. The gospel authors intended to convey that Jesus did not possess knowledge of the hour. Thus, the most apparent and historically supported reading of this text is that Jesus, in his human experience, did not know the hour. This interpretation aligns with early Christian thought, but creates a significant theological challenge for later, more dogmatically developed views that insist Jesus must have known the hour. Consequently, upholding the position that Jesus knew the hour in his human nature remains untenable within mainstream Christianity. And even if someone was to take the apparent understanding and believe that Jesus did not know the hour in his human nature, as I've explained before, this leads to a very heretical understanding of Jesus holding to two persons, one being human and one being divine. What ends up happening here is you have a true dichotomy between holding to an untenable position that does mental gymnastics on the text, but preserves later theological frameworks, or you must hold to the apparent understanding of the text, which is in conflict with later theological frameworks of Jesus having to be one person. Thank you guys for watching. I haven't been uploading much recently, but inshallah, I'll be uploading more in the coming days. There'll be responses and videos like these refuting particularly the Christian faith for now, and giving the main reasons why I believe Christianity is false. But if you do want to support me and have these uploads coming quicker, I'm going to be putting my GoFundMe link and my Patreon links below. Inshallah, all the donations will go towards me spending more time giving dawah and making these educational types of content. The donations would be greatly appreciated, and jazakallah khairan for all the support. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.